Next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian O'Neill.
Always glad to see you in the studio, Dr. Robert A. Heineman, political science professor emeritus, Alfred University.
Pleased to be here, Brian.
Glad to have you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, lots to cover. Iran and Saudi Arabia, Democrat primaries, Trump in the polls. How about that? Can we start out with the Fed?
Sure, we can talk about the Fed a little bit. As we know, the Fed has moved into the market to bring to push interest rates down a little farther. I think they're under 2% now, and as you know, Trump has been pounding on him with his little twitters to try to get him to go down to 0%. I don't know that they're going to do that. But whether it's Trump's pressure or their analysis of the economy, they certainly are trying to make money more available. And I think one of the things our listeners really don't realize is the huge amount of data that the Federal Reserve has at its disposal in terms of just all kinds of data. I have a friend at Alfred who has since retired as well, but his view was in terms of economic recovery, one of the key variables was the increase in sales of cardboard boxes. And when you could show that they were going way up, it indicated that, I guess people were moving, getting jobs, etc. I don't know. But there's just all kinds of data there. And clearly they feel that there's a need to loosen things up a little bit. So,
do you think?
Go ahead.
Do you think that the Federal Reserve, because I think Trump and others are suspicious of this, that they do what they do to hurt Donald Trump?
No.
No?
No.
Because Trump has kind of said as much.
Well, he may say as much, but as we know, a lot of the things that President Trump says are probably just ignored, better off ignored. No, I think these guys, I have seen an analysis by one of the economists from Wake Forest some time ago, and his view of it was that the idea that somehow the Fed is anticipating this or that economic condition, that basically the better way to read the Fed is that it's simply reflecting economic conditions at the time. And so the idea that somehow they move in and through anticipating economic changes are able to pump up or deflate the economy, his view was they're basically just reflecting what's going on in the economy anyway. I don't know. It's an interesting approach. I do think, though, that the role of the Fed is easily overblown. Now, this is not to say that during the big recession there 7-8 years ago that they didn't move in and save a number of banks and investment companies and such. I think they did, but the effect that has on the total economy, I'm not so sure.
Dr. Bob wanted to talk about, I brought up President Donald Trump in there, his standing in the polls.
Yes, well, it's interesting in terms of then there are a variety of polls out there, but the one thing that seems to be showing up again and again in the polls is that he is beginning to cut into the Hispanic, black minority vote, which has gone in the past heavily Democrat, and obviously for Obama, the black vote went hugely Democrat. But the president seems to be making some inroads there in terms of picking up increasing support from those minority groups. And, of course, the key that is, as far as he's concerned, is that, if, for example, I believe for black unemployment, it's the lowest since they've started recording black unemployment. And unemployment rate for Hispanics has dropped quite a bit too. Plus, I believe the gap between white and black employees has narrowed as well. So there are a lot of things there in terms of the economy that I think are helping Trump quite a bit, and I'm afraid the Democrats are missing the point here in this respect. So I think again you're seeing a number of the candidates trying desperately to carve out a African American constituency or a Hispanic constituency. I'm just not sure how far that's going to go.
Dr. Bob, what do you make of that Thursday's story about whistleblowing from the Trump White House, an anonymous whistleblower there?
Yeah. Well, I think, again, we don't know a great deal what's going on there. And some claim that Trump said something in a telephone conversation or some other kind of communicated conversation with a major world leader that somehow somebody in the intelligence community felt was inappropriate. But the problem here is that Trump has been pounding on the intelligence community pretty heavily here in the last couple of years. And I think there are certainly some people there that don't like him at all. And so the willingness to plant these kinds of rumors and leaks, I think there are some people there that are willing to do it. And, you have to understand these people are pretty bright people, but again, they're in a trade that involves a lot of deception and necessarily. And when they start get some of these people unhappy with President Trump, obviously these sorts of things tend to dribble out. So I don't know if there's anything to it or not. Certainly we've had all these fake news stories coming out, and as you recall, just in the last week or so, they've tried to go after Justice Kavanaugh again.
Yes, your thoughts.
Well, that's just such garbage. And apparently the New York Times article, which began to get a lot of play immediately from the liberal media, was that there was another woman who felt that she had somehow been treated inappropriately by Kavanaugh in high school or maybe college. But the New York Times did not attach the point that she refused to be interviewed, and that I think she, what did she say? She any of the witnesses didn't recall the incident at all, and so the fact of the matter is, there appears to be nothing to it, except some woman somewhere at some time made some comments about Kavanaugh. This is really sick. But I think the thing you're going to have to watch here, and I'm sure that the Trump people are looking at this, is that if Ginsburg leaves the court or Breyer leaves the court and they follow up with a nomination of a man, again, you're going to have these people stepping forward saying, oh, no, I was harassed, I was mistreated, etc., by the guy, whether there's any truth to it or not.
You think you agree with a lot of these conservatives that are saying this is going to be standard procedure going forward for Trump nominees?
Absolutely. And so I think what we're looking at here now is a strong possibility the next nominee, if Trump makes it, will be a woman. And there are plenty of very conservative women out there that would certainly fit the bill. But they've used this rumor and mongering approach on people, and it just destroys the lives of these people in some ways.
Question.
Yeah.
Do you think that the Republicans would ever fight back, fighting fire with fire, making up lies about the nominees on the Democrat side if the Democrats take the White House anytime soon?
I don't know. I do know, as you may recall, that the approach that Mitch McConnell used was he simply refused to allow the nomination come to a vote on the floor of the Senate.
Right.
And so that's another way you can deal with it.
And that's what they were so mad about with
Right.
that last Obama nominee.
Right. That,
What was his name? Gallant or something?
Garland.
Garland, okay.
Yeah, and but Mitch is not going to hesitate to continue to push nominees through the Senate now that we have a Republican president. So, but no, the attempt to find things in your past, which I guess in many ways is legitimate. It's what's illegitimate, of course, is bringing up these people who make these claims unsubstantiated, uncorroborated. It's pretty sad.
Oh, well, did you know about the Max Stier connection? I talked about this with Waddy the other day.
No.
Max Stier was a Clinton defense lawyer during the Ken Starr days. And Max Stier is the college guy who said that there's somebody out there who's claiming, talked to the New York Times, there's a woman out there who's claiming sexual harassment from the Yale days from Brett Kavanaugh. And then the alleged victim said, I don't remember what you're talking about.
Right.
And it was this Clinton defense lawyer that did it. Now, some people go as far as to point the finger at Hillary. I think Kavanaugh did that himself during the hearing, saying that this comes from the Clintons.
Yeah, I don't know whether he said
back
that or
in
not.
the hearing,
but that's certainly
you go that far.
That's certainly a Clinton approach. I remember when Bush was running against Clinton, and he was bringing in, I think it was ambassadors or representatives from the Soviet Union for a bit of a mini summit of some sort to get increased, get some increased publicity as president, etc. And the Clintons released this tale that somehow he had had an affair with one of his secretaries or something.
HW?
Yes, in Geneva or a conference or something, in which apparently nothing. But that's definitely a Clinton approach, to fire off something to try to distract from good publicity your opponent is getting.
I think the only time that H.W. Bush was credibly accused of sexual harassment when he was a senile old man and said dumb things from a wheelchair when he was way out of it and had some stroke.
Right, he tended to reach out and give a little pat here and there.
Yeah, but
in appropriate places. Yes.
I think it was very clear he didn't know what he was doing at that point.
Well, I don't know whether he did or not. There wasn't much he could do about it anyway. That's for sure. So.
Going to take a quick break. We will be back with Dr. Robert A. Heineman. Stay there.
If you're tired of overpaying to heat your home or have unreliable service, it's time to call Countryside Propane. At Countryside Propane, we are known for exceptional service, fair pricing, and no hidden fees. Switch today and your first tank fill is just $159.9 per gallon. James D. of Lindley, New York writes, I was amazed by the excellent customer service Countryside provided yesterday. Call today and lock in a low rate with no hidden fees. Call Countryside Propane, 607-527-3030.
We're back with Dr. Bob here on Friday. Dr. Bob, upcoming primaries for the 2020 election.
Yeah. Well, I think a couple of things we're seeing, one of which is that Joe Biden's support is weakening. He still leads the field, but I've seen some polls now that have Elizabeth Warren within single digits of him now in terms of support. And commentators and the polls tend to show that she's definitely beginning to gain some steam here. Now, how that plays in the long run, I don't know. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I saw an ad put out by the Republicans or a conservative group on Joe Biden, which really laid out this fumbling and his bumbles on the stage. So it's almost as though the Trump people would prefer to run against Elizabeth Warren. It seems to me they seem to be undercutting Biden, who isn't doing himself any favors either. So I guess, but he's still ahead in Iowa, and I don't know how it looks in New Hampshire. But as the polls indicate, it's kind of down to three people: Warren, Bernie Sanders, and Biden.
Bernie Sanders, can I talk Sanders?
Well, sure.
Bernie Sanders, and this is from MSNBC, said Thursday afternoon, fighting climate change will create up to 20 million good-paying jobs. Now, you know, the climate change is kind of interesting. The left, you know, they if you disagree with it, they'll say you're a climate change denier.
Yeah.
On the right, the conservatives just hammer away at the whole list of environmentalist predictions that did not come true. Where do you stand?
Well, I think the whole idea of climate change is kind of a redundancy in a sense. Obviously, climate by definition changes. But what they're trying to do is substitute climate change for the whole global warming approach, which they, of course, support the idea that there's tremendous global warming. And it's hard to deny that there are general warming trends around the globe currently. The real key is, are we, to what extent are we causing something like that? Or are these changes basically the sorts of things that have occurred throughout the millennia in terms of tremendously cold periods followed by warm periods, and long before there was any industrialization whatsoever. So I'm to say that somehow we're going to be able to go out there and fight climate change, I think is frankly quite absurd. However, there are a huge number of scientists and such who are able to pile in behind this, because if the government comes up with some really big programs in this area, there's a tremendous amount of money out there for scientific research, which may well turn up some interesting things. I'm not sure. But I'm just a little suspicious of that whole approach. And you are right. There are some predictions out there that, just falling totally flat.
Yeah, a lot on the conservative radio shows, they play old clips of Vice President Al Gore and others making all kinds of doomsday prophecies that never happened.
Well, and I'm trying to think of the fellow who was pushing the nuclear winter that was going to approach.
Oh, the Ice Age clips. You hear a lot of those.
Right, and then the ones on the population and how population was going to cause famine and
was that 60s and 70s?
Yeah, the 60s. Ehrlich, I think the Ehrlichs were the ones who were pushing that. What's the name of the book? The Population Bomb? I'm not sure.
That sounds right.
Yeah, I heard the guy talk when I was doing a research period at Claremont.
Paul Ehrlich and his wife Anna.
Right.
I know that from a little online search.
So but again, you got these guys out there pushing all these apocalyptic possibilities, I guess. Try to spend as much fear as we can, Brian. We want people, afraid.
Japan and India and
Yes.
Trade agreements.
Yes. Well, I think that's quite a clever move, again, by President Trump. And we talked last time about Trump's willingness to use the American economy as a weapon. And obviously we're in the middle of negotiations with China, which are progressing rather slowly. In the meantime, we have apparently concluded a number of smaller trade agreements with Japan and India. And I think what Trump is doing is kind of circumventing the Chinese there, so that he's trying very diligently to get the Japanese to buy more agricultural products, and I assume he's doing the same thing with the Indians to help out the agricultural sector, and that's really fairly clever. And I think we've got some trade agreements in place there.
The South China Morning Post headline: Trump ready to escalate trade war if deal is not agreed on soon. Other headlines: the Financial Times: Trump is serious about U.S. divorce from China. From the L.A. Times: Apple's brand takes a hit in China after backlash against Trump.
No, again, the use of the economic power, I think, is the way Trump wants to go. And with regard to this latest attack in Saudi Arabia,
that was I was about to bring up.
It's very clear, and we made this point earlier, that Trump does not want a war in the Middle East, and so he's backing off. Now, if the Saudis want to do something about it, the Israelis want to do something about it, that's a different story. But I think there are a couple of things I think Trump's looking at. First of all, I think he's looking at how many of our allies now are going to become more aggressive with sanctions if, in fact, we can show that these missiles and drones have Iranian manufacturing or origins. I think a lot of countries are going to say, hold it here. This is going too far. But the other side of it is, just because Trump is saying we don't want a war, etc., this does not mean we are not going to punish Iran really seriously.
Sanctions?
Well, not only sanctions, but when they shot down the drone, last year, we backed off, etc. But my understanding is that we hit them with a cyber attack that really just destroyed their ability in certain areas. And I think we have the ability to come in with some cyber hacking and attacks that can really dismember their military and commercial and a lot of other areas. So I think they're going to pay a price for this, as far as we're concerned. But it's not going to be an above-board, blatant confrontation kind of things that could escalate into a full-blown war. So we'll see. But they're gonna pay something here.
I'll see you next week.
Okay, I'll work on my diction. Yes.